Rain fell like judgment on the broken pavement behind St. Bridget's shelter. Maris Calder hugged her thin coat tighter, watching the bakery's back door with hollow eyes. Not begging, just waiting. The city had taught her begging did nothing. The night air carried the smell of wet cardboard until something changed. A black sedan rolled silently into the alley, stopping too perfectly. Two men stepped out, moving with the careful precision of those who carry weapons for a living. Then the rear door opened. A man emerged, tall, silver-templed, wearing a suit that cost more than most homes. His face showed nothing, but his breathing came shallow and tight, pain hiding behind control. "Boss, we should go to the clinic," one guard said. The older man hissed back, "And give them a camera angle? No." His knees buckled. Maris watched, frozen. As the man caught himself against the brick wall, leaving a dark red handprint. Blood, too much of it. She moved without thinking. "Hey," she called, voice low. "He's bleeding out." Both guards spun toward her, hands disappearing beneath their jackets. "Back off," one snapped. Maris raised her palms. "I'm not looking for trouble, but he'll collapse in less than 2 minutes if you let him stand there." The silver-haired man, the one they called Boss, turned those knife-sharp eyes on her. They didn't just look. They calculated, weighing whether she was a threat or a tool. "Who are you?" he asked, voice like gravel. "Someone who knows how to stop bleeding," Maris answered. "Let me help, or watch him die in this alley." A heartbeat of silence stretched between them. Then the boss nodded once, the smallest gesture that somehow felt like signing a contract. "Do it." They half-carried him to an abandoned storage unit across the street, a place Maris had slept in before the rats claimed it. Inside, the guards hovered uselessly as she tore a strip from her shirt and pressed it hard against the wound beneath his ribs. His body burned with fever. His lips had turned blue at the edges. "He's not just bleeding," Maris said. "He's sick, infected, and dehydrated." "We got water," a guard barked. Maris shook her head. "He can't swallow properly like this. He needs tiny amounts. Steady. Or he'll choke." From her bag, she pulled something the guards didn't expect. A battered baby bottle, empty and clean. "What is that?" one asked. The boss's eyes fluttered open, his hand weakly grasping her wrist. "No hospitals," he whispered. "I heard you," Maris said softly, "but you're not staying alive on pride." She didn't tell them why she had a bottle. She didn't explain the private grief she carried. She just did what no one else could, saved the most dangerous man in the city with what little she had left. Neither of them knew a camera lens had captured it all through a cracked window. By morning, the city would hear a rumor. Homeless woman breastfed mafia boss to pay her father's debt. And nothing would ever be the same. Maris didn't know who Rafe Ventori was until she stepped into the shelter line the next day. People stared like she'd grown horns. A volunteer thrust a phone in her face, a grainy photo, a cruel caption, laughing emojis. Her stomach dropped. She hadn't done it for money. She hadn't done it for some debt. She'd done it because she couldn't watch a man die, even if that man was the monster they said he was. But the rumor had one detail that cut too deep. Her father's debt. Her father, Gideon Calder, had once been a union accountant. A good man who made one terrible mistake. He signed papers he shouldn't have, told himself it was temporary, just to keep food on the table. Then the wrong people noticed. When he tried to back out, they broke his fingers. When he tried to run, they took his home. When he begged, they destroyed his spirit. And when Gideon finally disappeared, Maris was left holding the ashes of a family and a debt she never agreed to. The rumor wasn't just gossip. It was a message. Someone knew her story. Someone had found her. Across town, in a townhouse that looked respectable from the outside, Rafe Ventori opened his eyes to the smell of antiseptic and polished wood. A young man stood at the doorway, sharp suit, sharper smile. "Boss, you're alive." Cassian Vale, Rafe's right-hand man, the one who always sounded reasonable before suggesting something unforgivable. "Because of her," Rafe said, voice rough with pain. Cassian's smile twitched. "The street is talking. If she's smart, she'll vanish. Rafe's gaze turned cold. She won't vanish. Not if she thinks she can still fix what's broken. That rumor is inconvenient, Cassian said carefully. A boss doesn't survive by appearing weak. She saw me bleed. She saw me human, Rafe countered. That doesn't make me weak. Cassian leaned closer. No, but it makes you vulnerable. And vulnerability invites knives. Rafe stared at the ceiling, mind clearing despite the pain. Someone had arranged that alley. The timing, the camera, the story. It wasn't random. It was a setup. And the bait was a homeless woman with eyes that burned with a fury he recognized. That evening, a black van rolled up beside the shelter. A door slid open. A hand clamped over Maris's mouth. She fought, hard, elbows, teeth, rage. But the men were trained, calm, efficient. When the hood came off, she was in the townhouse, and Rafe Venturi sat waiting, watching her with eyes that had seen too many betrayals to count. You've seen how high the stakes are now, but this is just the beginning. What happens next will change everything. Comment where you're watching from, subscribe now and stay with us. You won't want to miss what's coming. Can you walk away now knowing you've come this far? Maris ripped the hood off, heart hammering against her ribs. The room she stood in gleamed with wealth, polished wood, leather furniture, artwork that belonged in museums. A fortress disguised as a home, and sitting across from her was Rafe Venturi, watching her with eyes that missed nothing. You can't just take people, Maris spat, fury overriding fear. Rafe didn't flinch. You were already taken by whoever spread that story. I didn't ask for any of this, she said, voice shaking. I know, Rafe answered quietly. It wasn't your doing. Maris stepped back, scanning for exits. Let me go. Rafe leaned forward, pain flashing across his face before he controlled it. They won't let you live if you leave. You became leverage the moment someone connected you to me. The truth hit her like cold water. She wasn't just a witness anymore. She was a weapon aimed at Rafe Venturi's empire. So, I'm a hostage, Maris said flatly. Something flickered in Rafe's eyes. Was it regret? You're under protection. Protection with locked doors, she shot back. Rafe stood slowly, his wound still fresh beneath his tailored shirt. Maris, if you leave, you'll die. And I don't pay my debts by burying the people who saved me. The words hung between them. No one had spoken to her like she mattered in so long. She hated that her eyes burned. She hated more that a mafia boss was the first person in months to see her as human. 1 week, he said. Stay 1 week while I find who targeted you. And then what? Maris asked, voice barely above a whisper. And Rafe's gaze held hers. Then you decide. Leave with enough money to start over or stay and help me finish this. Why would I help you? The question came out smaller than she intended. Because whoever used you to get to me also has connections to your father's disappearance. Maris's breath caught. How do you know about my father? Rafe's expression hardened. Because I've been hunting the same people for years, the ones who broke away from my organization, the ones who prefer chaos to order. A knock interrupted them. Cassian entered, his perfect smile never reaching his eyes. Boss, the council is waiting, he said, gaze sliding over Maris like she was furniture. Rafe nodded. Show Ms. Calder to her room. Room, Maris repeated, not cell? Something almost like a smile touched Rafe's lips. The difference is in the lock. Yours will be on your side of the door. As Cassian led her away, Maris realized the truth. She'd walked into the center of a war she didn't understand, with a man who was either her protector or her doom. And somewhere in the city, someone was counting on her fear to destroy them both. Cassian's fingers moved across his phone screen, deleting the message as soon as it was sent. She's inside. Venturi trusts her. The reply came seconds later. Keep watching. Wait for the signal. He slipped the phone away before anyone could see, his face returning to perfect loyalty. The role he'd played for years while waiting for Rafe Venturi to show weakness. Now he had it. Across the townhouse, Maris explored her room, a space larger than any apartment she'd ever had. Soft bed, bathroom with endless hot water, a closet filled with clothes that somehow fit her. A beautiful cage was still a cage. She pressed her ear to the wall, listening for voices, for clues. Nothing. The door opened without a knock. Maris spun, fists raised. Rafe stood there, eyebrow lifted at her stance. You fought before? Maris lowered her hands slowly. You learn fast on the streets. He nodded, respecting the truth in that. Dinner is ready, unless you prefer to eat alone. The invitation surprised her. Do your hostages usually dine with their captors? You're not a hostage, Rafe said, that edge returning to his voice. And I don't usually dine with anyone. The dining room held a table meant for 12 but set for 2. Candles burned despite the modern lighting. Old habits, old traditions. Rafe poured wine without asking if she drank. You have questions. Unask them. Maris took a careful sip. Who are you really? You know who I am. I know what people say, that's not the same thing. Rafe studied her, weighing something. Then he reached for a framed photo on the sideboard. An older woman, stern and elegant. My mother, he said without looking at Maris. She taught me 2 things. Power keeps you alive, and love makes you stupid. Maris gave a bitter laugh. Then you're safe. Rafe finally looked at her, something unreadable in his expression. Am I? The question hung between them, charged with something neither would name. Maris looked away first. After dinner, she stood by her window watching the street below. A car had been parked there for hours. Inside, a shadow that didn't move. Watching, waiting. Maris stepped back from the glass. Somewhere in this house were answers about her father, about the debt that had destroyed him, about the men who had taken everything. And somewhere in this house was a man who was either her salvation or her destruction. The strange thing was she couldn't tell which frightened her more. On the 3rd night, Maris crept through the darkened townhouse. The guards changed shifts at 2 a.m., a gap in the perfect security that surrounded her. She needed answers, not protection. A sliver of light spilled from beneath Rafe's study door. Voices drifted through, Cassian's precise tone and Rafe's deeper rumble. We found Gideon Calder, Cassian said. Maris froze, blood turning to ice. Alive? Rafe asked. A pause that stretched too long. Barely. Maris pushed the door open before she could think. Where is he? Cassian's eyes flicked to her like she was an insect that had learned to speak. Boss, she shouldn't... Rafe held up a hand. Tell her. A warehouse on the river, Cassian said, his reluctance obvious. The people holding him aren't ours. Maris's knees threatened to buckle. Who are they? Rafe's expression darkened. Men who used to work for me. What do you mean, used to? Maris demanded. A faction split, Rafe said, jaw tight. They wanted more chaos, more blood. I wanted stability. The truth crashed over Maris like a wave. So my father is collateral in your war. Rafe didn't look away. Yes. Then this is your debt to pay, Venturi. Maris's voice broke. Not mine. Rafe stood, pain from his wound flashing across his face, but he didn't sit back down. You're right, he said softly. It's mine. The admission stunned her. Men like Venturi didn't admit fault. Your father was caught between factions, Rafe continued. When he tried to get out, Silas Morn, the man who leads the splinter group, used him as an example. An example? Maris repeated, dread filling her. Of what happens to people who choose my protection over his chaos. Cassian cleared his throat. Boss, this isn't wise. Enough, Rafe cut him off. She deserves the truth. He turned back to Maris. Your father chose to work with me to clean certain books. It was legal, technically. Then Silas offered him more money to falsify other records. Your father refused. Maris's world tilted. Her father hadn't been corrupt. He'd been caught. We're going to get him out, Rafe said. We? Maris challenged. Rafe's eyes held hers. You saved my life. I pay my debts. In that moment, something shifted between them. Not trust, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. When? Maris asked. Soon, Rafe answered. But first, you need to learn how to survive what's coming. Again, Rafe said, circling Maris in the basement training room. Sweat dripped down her temple as she repeated the disarming move he'd shown her. 3 days of this: combat training, weapons familiarization, surveillance awareness. Your enemy will be stronger, Rafe warned. You need to be smarter. Maris twisted, executing the maneuver perfectly this time. The practice knife clattered to the floor. Like that? She asked, breathing hard. Something like approval flickered in Rafe's eyes. Better. His proximity sent unwelcome heat through her, the dangerous kind that made her forget who he was. What he was? Why are you doing this? She asked suddenly. Training me? Rafe stepped back, reaching for a towel. Because when we go for your father, you need to be able to protect yourself. That's not what I'm asking. Rafe's gaze met hers. Then what are you asking? Why do you care if I live or die? The question hung between them, charged with everything unsaid. Before Rafe could answer, the door opened. One of his lieutenants, Marco, the only one who'd been kind to her, entered with a laptop. Boss, you need to see this. The screen showed surveillance footage of the warehouse. Guards patrolled in precise patterns. Maris leaned closer, spotting something the men missed. There, she pointed. The guard on the east side. He checks his watch every 8 minutes. Then steps away for exactly 45 seconds. Rafe and Marco stared at her. What? Maris asked. When you live on the streets, you learn to notice patterns. It's how you survive. Rafe's expression changed. Not quite a smile, but close. That's our window. They spent hours planning. Maris's street knowledge complemented Rafe's tactical experience in ways neither expected. That night, as Maris returned to her room, Cassian blocked her path. You're getting too comfortable here, he warned softly. Don't forget what he really is. I know exactly what he is, Maris replied. The question is, what are you? She pushed past him, not seeing the hatred that flashed across his perfect features. Inside her room, Maris stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Tomorrow they would attempt to rescue her father. Tomorrow she might learn the full truth. And tomorrow she would discover if Rafe Venturi was truly the monster everyone claimed, or something far more dangerous. A man she could actually trust. The grandfather clock struck midnight as Maris found Rafe alone on the balcony, silhouetted against the city lights. His shoulders carried the weight of tomorrow's rescue mission. You should be resting, he said without turning. Maris stepped beside him. So should you. Silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, but charged with unspoken questions. Why did you help me that night? Rafe finally asked. Most people would have walked away. The question caught her off guard. I don't know. Maybe I'm not most people. Rafe turned to her, moonlight catching the silver at his temples. No, you're not. Something in his voice made her heart beat faster. I had a daughter once, Rafe said unexpectedly, eyes fixed on the horizon. Sophia. She was 5 when a rival family targeted my home instead of me. Maris's breath caught. I'm sorry. It was 15 years ago, he said, but the grief in his voice was still raw. That's when I changed the rules. No families, no innocence. The other bosses called me weak. It's not weakness to have lines you won't cross, Maris whispered. Rafe's eyes found hers. What about you? What took you from a normal life to that alley? Maris looked away. After my father disappeared, I lost everything trying to find him. Job, apartment, savings. Then one winter night I had to choose between heat and food. And the baby bottle? Rafe asked carefully. Pain sliced through her. I was pregnant when it all fell apart. The stress. I lost her at 7 months. My body didn't understand she was gone. Without warning, Rafe's hand covered hers on the railing. Not demanding, not controlling, just connecting. That's why you saved me, he said softly. You couldn't save her. A tear slipped down Maris's cheek. Maybe we're both trying to save what we've already lost. The moment stretched between them, fragile and honest, until Rafe's phone buzzed. His face hardened as he read the message. They've moved your father. We go tonight. Just like that, the spell broke. but something had changed between them, something neither could take back. The warehouse loomed against the midnight sky, rust-stained walls reflecting dull security lights. Rafe's team moved like shadows, positioning around the perimeter. Maris's heart pounded as she crouched behind a shipping container exactly where Rafe had ordered her to stay. The weight of the gun he'd given her felt foreign in her hand. Through her earpiece she heard Rafe's voice, east entrance clear, moving in. The plan was simple. Use the guard's pattern break to enter, locate Gideon, extract. No casualties if possible. But something felt wrong. When gunfire erupted from the wrong direction, Maris knew why. The guards weren't on their usual pattern. They were waiting. Someone had warned them. Through the chaos, Maris spotted Rafe moving with deadly precision. Until he suddenly stopped. A man stepped into the light. Slick hair, predatory smile. Even from a distance, Maris knew who he was, the monster from her father's nightmares. Silas Morn. "Rafe," Silas called out, grinning. "Still alive? Or I heard a woman had to feed you like an infant." Rafe's face turned to stone. "Where is Gideon?" Silas laughed. "Oh, him? He's just a prop. The real show is you." He lifted a phone, its screen glowing. Live streaming. Maris's stomach dropped as understanding hit her. This wasn't about her father. This was about humiliating Rafe, weakening him. And the rumor was just Silas's knife. "Tell the city who saved you, boss," Silas taunted. "Tell them how low you sank." Rafe's eyes flicked to where Maris hid, just once. She understood the impossible choice. If Rafe admitted the truth, it could destroy him. If he denied it, it would destroy her. Movement caught her eye, Cassian whispering to a guard behind Rafe. The guard's hand moved toward his gun. Horror flooded Maris. "Rafe!" She lunged without thinking, breaking cover. The warehouse exploded with sound as the gun fired. Burning pain tore across Maris's shoulder as the bullet meant for Rafe's back caught her instead. She spun from the impact, crashing hard against concrete. Rafe turned, his expression transforming into something terrifying. Not the calculating crime boss, but a man witnessing the only person who'd shown him humanity, bleeding for his sake. In that moment, everything changed. The rescue had become a trap. The debt had become a war. And Maris had just proven where her loyalty truly lay, with a man the world called monster, but who had shown her more honor than anyone else in her broken life. Blood soaked through Maris's shirt as chaos erupted. Rafe moved with cold fury, his gun trained on Cassian. "You," he said, voice deadly quiet, "you sold me out." Cassian's perfect mask slipped, revealing the ambition beneath. "The organization needs strength, not whatever weakness she's infected you with." Silas laughed from across the warehouse floor. "See, even your own men know you've gone soft." Rafe didn't take his eyes off Cassian. "Marco, get Maris out, now." As Marco rushed to her side, Silas raised his voice. "Go ahead, Ventori. Kill them both. Prove you're the monster everyone knows you are." Something shifted in Rafe's expression. He glanced at Maris, pale, bleeding, but stubbornly conscious. "Don't," she whispered. For a heartbeat, the warehouse fell silent. Everyone waited for the bloodshed that always followed betrayal in Rafe's world. But Rafe Ventori did something no one expected. He didn't kill Silas or Cassian. Instead, he grabbed Silas's phone, still live streaming, and spoke directly into the camera. "You want the truth?" His voice cut like steel. "Here it is. A woman I didn't deserve saved my life. And the men who hurt her and her father aren't my soldiers. They're parasites." He turned to his men. "Call the unit we pay to ignore us. Tell them the river warehouse holds kidnapped civilians." Maris blinked through pain-blurred vision. "You're calling the police?" Rafe met her gaze. "I'm choosing a different kind of justice." Silas's face contorted with rage. "You can't. Watch me," Rafe cut him off. Within minutes, sirens wailed in the distance. Rafe's men moved with practiced efficiency, planting evidence, securing escape routes. "Find Gideon Calder," Rafe ordered Marco. "Get him out before the police arrive." As Maris struggled to stay conscious, she saw Cassian trying to slip away in the chaos. But Rafe had anticipated it. Two men blocked Cassian's exit. Rafe approached slowly. You sold my weakness to my enemy. Cassian forced a smile. Boss, it was strategy. People respect fear. No, Rafe interrupted. They respect control. And you tried to take mine. Cassian's eyes hardened. You're choosing her over the Empire. I'm choosing the Empire I can live with. As police swarmed the warehouse, Rafe knelt beside Maris. His hand gently brushed her hair back, a tenderness at odds with the violence around them. Stay with me, he murmured. You still have a debt to collect. Through the haze of pain, Maris felt something unfamiliar bloom in her chest. Not fear, not gratitude, but something far more dangerous. Hope. You've just witnessed a man choose justice over revenge, all because one woman showed him humanity. The stakes have never been higher. And what happens next will change everything for Rafe and Maris. Comment where you're watching from. Subscribe now and stay with us. You won't want to miss how this unexpected connection transforms them both. Can you really walk away now? The hospital rooms smelled of antiseptic and fresh flowers, an arrangement changed daily by Rafe's men. Maris's shoulder ached beneath clean bandages as she watched her father sleep in the bed beside hers. Gideon Calder looked older than his 56 years. His face was gaunt, body broken by captivity, but his chest rose and fell with steady breaths. Alive. The door opened soundlessly. Rafe entered, carrying 2 coffee cups and the weight of a changing empire. How is he? He asked, offering Maris a cup. Doctor says he'll recover, physically at least. Maris took the coffee, their fingers brushing. On the psychological damage, that's harder to heal. Rafe nodded, understanding wounds that went deeper than skin. And you. I'll live. Thanks to you. His jaw tightened. You took a bullet meant for me. Returning the favor, she said softly. You saved my father. Rafe looked away, uncomfortable with gratitude. The news is calling it a major bust of a human trafficking operation. Silas and 14 others are in custody. And Cassian? Facing federal charges, I made sure he can't escape. Rafe's voice hardened. The evidence will keep him buried for decades. Maris studied him. That's not how you usually handle betrayal. No, Rafe admitted. It's not. The unspoken question hung between them. Why change now? Before either could speak, Gideon stirred. His eyes fluttered open, confusion giving way to disbelief as he saw Maris. "Ha! My girl," he croaked, tears rolling down his weathered face. "I'm sorry, so sorry." Maris gripped his hand. "You're here. That's all that matters." Rafe stepped back, giving them privacy, but Gideon's gaze found him. Recognition dawned in the older man's eyes. "Venturi," Rafe nodded once. "Mr. Calder." "You kept your word," Gideon whispered. Maris looked between them. "You knew each other." "Your father worked for me," Rafe said. "When he refused to falsify records for Silas, I promised him protection. I failed." "Until now," Gideon added weakly. Later, on the hospital roof where Rafe went to smoke, a habit he'd quit years ago but resumed after the warehouse, Maris found him staring over the city. "The story they spread," Rafe said without turning. "It will follow you." "It already did," Maris replied softly. Rafe hesitated, then said, "I can give you money, a new identity, security. I don't want to be bought, Venturi." He turned to her then, moonlight catching the vulnerability in his eyes. "Then what do you want?" Maris swallowed. The truth was dangerous. "I want to know," she whispered, "if the man who chose justice is real, or if he disappears when the city stops watching." Rafe's face tightened like he felt the weight of every sin he'd committed. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I know this. You saved me when you had every reason to let me die." Maris's breath caught as Rafe stepped closer. "And I won't forget it." The space between them felt like the edge of something forbidden, fragile, and more powerful than either wanted to admit. Maris stepped back first because she still didn't trust hope, but she didn't walk away. And that was its own kind of promise. 2 weeks after the warehouse raid, Rafe sat in his study facing 5 of his captains. Their expressions ranged from respect to barely concealed contempt. "The Russians are moving on the docks," said Vincent, the oldest captain. "They think you've gone soft." "The Albanians too," added another. 3 of our distributors have switched sides." Rafe remained perfectly still, only his eyes revealing the calculation behind them. "And you? What do you think?" The room fell silent. Finally, Vincent spoke. "You let the police take Cassian and Silas. That's not how we handle betrayal." "You mean that's not how we used to handle it," Rafe corrected. Outside the door, Maris listened, heart pounding. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but the tension in the house had been building for days. "The woman," Vincent said. "She's changed you." Rafe's voice hardened. "She showed me another way. One that doesn't leave bodies for the police and rivals to count." "It's weakness," someone muttered. "Is it?" Rafe asked quietly. "Cassian faces 30 years in a federal prison. Silas even longer. Their assets seized, their connections exposed. Tell me how that's weaker than a bullet." The meeting ended without resolution. As the captains filed out, Maris slipped away, returning to her father's recovery room. Gideon sat up when she entered. His strength was returning, though slowly. "They're talking about leaving him," Gideon said without preamble. Maris stilled. "You heard?" "I've been in this world longer than you think," he replied. "When captains smell weakness, they start planning exits." "Rafe isn't weak," Maris said, surprising herself with her vehemence. Gideon studied her. "No, he's evolving. That's more dangerous." Later, as Maris sorted through documents from Cassian's office, she found something odd. Regular payments to an offshore account linked to a name she recognized from Rafe's inner circle. When she showed Rafe, his face darkened. "The betrayal goes deeper than Cassian." "There's more," Maris said, pulling out a note her father had given her. "Dad says these aren't just random attacks. Someone's systematically targeting your legitimate businesses, the ones that connect to your political protection." Rafe's eyes met hers. "They're not trying to take my territory. They're trying to expose me completely." "What will you do?" she asked. The question hung between them. Would he revert to the man he was, or continue becoming the man he could be? "What I have to," Rafe answered, but this time doubt shadowed his eyes. Maris packed her small bag while Gideon watched from the doorway of their shared suite. "You're making a mistake," he said softly. "I'm protecting him," Maris countered. "As long as I'm here, his men see weakness." "Is that the real reason you're running?" Maris paused, hands trembling slightly. "I don't belong in his world, Dad." "And where do you belong?" Gideon asked. "Back on the streets? We'll use the money he offered. Start over somewhere." Gideon stepped into the room. "Maris, I've watched how he looks at you. How you look at him when you think no one sees." Heat rushed to her face. "It doesn't matter. Men like Rafe Venturi don't—" "Fall in love?" Gideon finished. "I think he already has." A knock interrupted them. Rafe stood in the doorway, expression changing as he saw the packed bag. "You're leaving." Not a question. Gideon squeezed Maris's shoulder before slipping out, closing the door behind him. Silence stretched between them until Maris spoke. "Your empire is fracturing because of me." "My empire is changing because of me," Rafe corrected. "You were just the catalyst. Your men are ready to walk away." "Let them," Rafe said, stepping closer. "The ones worth keeping will stay." Maris backed away, her heart pounding. "This isn't about loyalty. It's about survival. As long as I'm here, you look human," Rafe challenged. "Is that such a terrible thing to be?" "For a man in your position? Yes." Rafe closed the distance between them. "And what if I don't want that position anymore? What if I want something else?" The intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "Rafe, tell me you don't feel this," he said, voice rough. "Tell me, and I'll let you walk out that door." Maris couldn't lie, not to him, not anymore. "I feel it, but it terrifies me." Rafe's hand gently cupped her face. "It terrifies me too." The moment stretched, electric with possibility until Rafe lowered his head, his lips a breath away from hers. Then the explosion hit. The windows shattered inward as the west wing of the house erupted in flames. Rafe instinctively covered Maris with his body as debris rained down. Shouts and gunfire erupted throughout the house. "Stay here," Rafe ordered, drawing his gun. "No," Maris grabbed his arm. "Together or not at all." For a split second, something like pride flashed in Rafe's eyes. Then he nodded once. When they moved into the smoke-filled hallway together, unaware that this attack would separate them in ways neither could have predicted, and force them both to decide what they were truly willing to sacrifice for love. Maris woke to the taste of blood and darkness. Her head throbbed where someone had struck her during the chaos of the explosion. The last thing she remembered was Rafe shouting her name as they were separated by falling debris. Now she was bound to a chair in what looked like an abandoned office. The windows were blacked out, but she could hear water nearby. The docks, maybe. The door opened, spilling harsh light across the concrete floor. "Finally awake," said a voice Maris didn't recognize. A man stepped into view, expensively dressed, silver-haired, with cold eyes that assessed her like merchandise. "Who are you?" Maris asked, voice raw from smoke. The man smiled without warmth. "Anthony Russo, the man Raphael betrayed for his empire 20 years ago." Maris's blood went cold. Rafe had mentioned Russo once, his mentor turned rival. "You're the head," she whispered. "Silas and Cassian worked for you." "Very good," Russo nodded. "And now you're going to help me finish what they started." A phone was placed on the table, screen facing Maris. On it, a live video showed Rafe in his damaged house, frantically coordinating a search. Russo dialed a number. "Raffaele, I have something that belongs to you." Through the phone, Maris watched Rafe freeze. "Anthony. The woman or the empire, Raffaele. Choose." "What do you want?" Rafe's voice turned deadly. "Everything. Your territories, your political connections, your legitimate businesses are signed over by midnight. And if I refuse," Russo stepped closer to Maris, pressing a gun to her temple, "then you'll watch her die, like I watched my daughter die when your men burned my house." The colour drained from Rafe's face. "That wasn't me. I told them no families. Yet my Elena still burned," Russo snarled. "Now you'll feel what I felt, watching the one clean thing in your life turn to ash." The call ended. Russo turned to Maris with eyes like winter. "He won't choose you. Men like us don't sacrifice power for sentiment." But Maris had seen something in Rafe's expression that Russo had missed. Not just fear, but resolve. Across town, Rafe gathered what remained of his loyal men. Among them stood Gideon Calder, pale but determined. "I know where they'd take her," Gideon said. "Russo's old cannery. I overheard Cassian mention it once." Marco, Rafe's most loyal captain, shook his head. "Boss, if you give up everything to Russo—" "I'm not giving him anything," Rafe cut in. "And I'm not losing her." For the first time in 20 years, Raphael Venturi reached out to people he'd never thought to ask for help. Police officers he'd once bribed, federal agents he'd avoided, even rival families with their own reasons to fear Russo's return. By nightfall, an unlikely alliance had formed around a man who had spent decades being feared, not followed. And all because of a woman who had seen the human behind the monster. The abandoned cannery loomed against the night sky, its rusted skeleton a monument to forgotten industry. Inside, Russo waited with 20 armed men and one hostage. Maris worked silently at the rope binding her wrists. Hours of patient friction had frayed the fibers, but not enough. Not yet. Midnight approached. Russo checked his watch. "Your lover is running out of time." "He's not my lover," Maris said. "No?" Russo raised an eyebrow. "Then why sacrifice his empire for you?" Before Maris could answer, the door opened. Rafe walked in alone, carrying a leather portfolio. "The transfer documents," he said, placing them on the table. "Everything I own, signed over to you." Russo's eyes gleamed with triumph as he flipped through the papers. "So the great Raffaele Venturi does have a weakness." "Let her go," Rafe said, eyes fixed on Maris. "Of course," Russo smiled. "After you watch me build on the ashes of your legacy." he signaled to his men. Two grabbed Rafe, forcing him to his knees. Did you really think I'd let either of you walk away? Russo laughed. You'll die knowing I took everything, your empire, your dignity, and then her life. Something shifted in Rafe's expression. Not fear, but anticipation. You forget, Anthony. I learned from the best. Maris felt the rope finally give. In that moment, lights suddenly cut through the windows, dozens of them surrounding the building. Police! FBI! Drop your weapons! Chaos erupted. Gunshots, shouting, Russo's men scrambling for positions. As her guard turned toward the commotion, Maris launched herself from the chair, driving her shoulder into his stomach. They crashed to the floor, his gun skittering away. Across the room, Rafe broke free from his captors, moving with deadly purpose toward Russo. But Russo had one final card to play. Your faithful Marco arranged all of this, he shouted over the chaos. He's been mine for years. Who do you think told me about the woman? Rafe faltered, just for a second. It was enough. Russo raised his gun. Maris didn't think. She grabbed the fallen guard's weapon and fired. The bullet struck Russo's shoulder. He staggered back, shock replacing triumph on his face. Federal agents poured through every entrance. Russo's men dropped their weapons, surrendering to the overwhelming force. In the aftermath, as Russo was led away in handcuffs, Rafe found Maris standing alone amidst the chaos, still holding the gun. You shot him, Rafe said quietly. I saved you, Maris corrected, letting the weapon drop from her trembling hands. That's what we do, apparently. Rafe reached for her, pulling her against him like he'd never let go. I gave them everything, the evidence, the accounts, all of it. The legitimate businesses might survive. Oh, but the rest. Your empire, Maris whispered against his chest. Was never worth your life, Rafe finished. Around them, the remnants of a criminal legacy crumbled, but something else was being built from its ashes. Something neither had dared to hope for. A second chance. 3 months after the cannery raid, Maris stood at the window of a penthouse overlooking the city. Not Rafe's old townhouse, that had been seized as evidence, but a new place, smaller yet somehow more like home. The door opened behind her. Rafe entered, setting his keys on the counter with a sigh that carried the weight of his day. How did the hearing go? Maris asked. Better than expected, Rafe said, loosening his tie. The immunity deal is holding. In exchange for my testimony against Russo's network, I keep the legitimate businesses. Maris crossed to him, I helping with his tie. A small gesture that felt strangely intimate. And Marco. Cooperating to save himself, Rafe's jaw tightened. But the damage is done. Half my former captains are in custody, the rest scattered. You lost your empire, Maris said softly. Rafe's hand caught hers. I built it on blood. Maybe it needed to fall. The man before her wasn't the same one she'd found bleeding in an alley. His eyes carried the same intensity, but something had shifted, as if a burden had been lifted even as new ones were added. My father's new apartment is ready, Maris said. He's moving in tomorrow. You could stay with him, Rafe said carefully. Start fresh, away from all this. Maris held his gaze. Is that what you want? I want what keeps you safe. That's not what I asked. Rafe stepped closer. The careful distance they'd maintained since the raid finally breaking. You know what I want, Maris. I've given up everything else to keep it. The words hung between them, raw and honest. I should hate you, she whispered, for the world you came from, for the danger that follows you. Do you? Rafe asked, voice rough. Maris shook her head. I've tried, but somehow the man who would sacrifice an empire to save a homeless woman doesn't seem like someone I should run from. Rafe's hand gently cupped her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. I don't know what I am anymore. Not a boss, not quite legitimate. You're just a man, Maris said. That's all I ever wanted. When his lips finally met hers, it felt like the end of one story and the beginning of another. Later that evening, as they prepared for dinner with Gideon, a courier delivered an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single photograph, a grainy image of Maris in the alley that first night, taken from an angle she hadn't seen before. On the back, 3 words written in black ink. "You're still mine." Rafe's face hardened as he read it, his eyes colder than midnight. "Russo's in maximum security," Maris said, her voice unsteady. "Who would—" "Someone who was watching from the beginning," Rafe answered grimly. "Someone who knows what you mean to me." Maris felt a chill crawl up her spine. Then who's the real enemy? Rafe looked out at the city, at the shadows and rooftops where threats could hide behind respectable facades. "Someone who's not afraid of me," he said quietly. "Not yet." The rescue was only chapter 1. The real battle had just begun. You've watched a homeless woman and a mafia boss change each other forever. Their story of sacrifice, justice, and forbidden love isn't over. It's evolving into something even more dangerous. Who sent that photo? What happens when love becomes a target? Subscribe now and comment where you're watching from. Some stories demand to be followed to their end. Can you really walk away knowing the greatest threat is still out there, watching them, watching us? The next chapter changes everything.